Rules Committee meeting for Thursday, May 26th to order. Mr. Kidwell, would you give the invocation, please?
Dear Heavenly Father, creator of all things, watch over us today as we try to do the business of the Cherokee Nation. Watch over our people. Watch over everyone today as we do our work and we try to make things right and try to do the right thing. We ask your forgiveness for any of those that we've trespassed on. We ask for your understanding. We ask for your guidance. We ask all these things in the name of Jesus. Amen.
Amen. All right, Shelley, could you do roll call, please?
Yes, sir. Mike Shambaugh,
Here.
Joe Deere, Keith Austin,
Here.
Danny Callison,
Here.
Julia Coates,
Here.
Sean Crittenden, Mike Dobbins,
Here.
Rex Jordan, Johnny Kidwell,
Here.
Darrell Legg,
Here.
Wes Snowfire, Dora Petzkowski,
Here.
Joshua Sam,
Here.
Melvina Shotpouch, E.O. Smith, Kendessa Teehee, Victoria Vasquez. We have a quorum.
All right, good deal. If everybody's had a chance to look at the minutes, all right, we have a motion and a second to approve the minutes. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. All right, first of all, in our reports from the Marshal Service, Shannon Buell.
Good afternoon.
Afternoon.
Besides what's in the written monthly report, this month's been very busy for the Marshal Service, especially my Special Operations team. Within that envelope, we have SAR, Search and Rescue. We have the normal, what people consider a SWAT team. We have dive operations. Between the storms in northeastern Oklahoma the past month, my team has been very busy out in the communities trying to help those communities sustain after those events. We've also had an increase on fugitive warrants this month. My team has conducted several fugitive recoveries within the month, so we've been quite busy on that area of what we do every day. So other than that, if there's any questions for me, please let me hear them.
Does anybody have any questions for Marshal Buell? Sean?
Just a comment. Just another example. Yesterday, had some elderly ladies that had some concerns. I talked to Marshal Buell, and within just a couple hours, they were there with me, speaking to our wonderful elders. So thank you for your department's, heart and coming out yesterday. Appreciate you. Thank you, Speaker.
Anybody else? All right, good report, Marshal. Thank you.
Thank you, Speaker.
All right, from the Office of the Attorney General, Sarah Hill.
Good afternoon.
Hello, Sarah.
I'm going to have a little bit more short report than I normally feel like I just give you guys tons of information, but it's been I want to say a quiet month, but it's been a month of us continuing the work that we've normally been doing. We've filed more than 1,500 cases this year so far, and we think we're on track to file over 4,000 felony and misdemeanor cases this year, assuming it doesn't pick up or slow down significantly between now and the end of the year. So we are still quite busy at the AG's office working on our criminal prosecutions. We have a new probation officer that will be starting on Monday, and the probation office has received more than 400 referrals for probation services now, so that office continues to grow at a good clip. I was able to had an opportunity to give the commencement address at the TU Law School this year for what they call the hooding ceremony for new lawyers, and so that was pretty exciting. I got to talk a little bit about the only law school on an Indian reservation as far as we know, which is TU Law School on the Muskogee Nation Reservation. So it was an honor to be able to address my law school and talk to them a little bit about the Mcgrath decision and tribal law and why the rule of law is so important in our communities and why we have to as lawyers, have an obligation to try and see justice. Even justice delayed is better than no justice at all for tribal communities. And I'm looking forward to the Sovereignty Symposium, which will be going on, I think it's week after next. The Sovereignty Symposium is held every year by the Oklahoma Supreme Court. It's the big legal conference where all of the Indian lawyers get together in Oklahoma City and spend several days talking about Indian law issues in the state that are relevant to us. And I know Chief Hoskin is going to be speaking at that event. I'll be on a panel at that event. And so we'll be informing each other and other members of the bar about Indian law issues that are coming up in Oklahoma. So, there's a lot of other things going on in the world, and I don't want to, we're still waiting on a decision in Castro Huerta, which is the biggest, legal item that we're sort of waiting on right now. The briefs were filed today in the Brackeen case, which is the ICWA case. The opposing briefs are going to be filed today, so we'll be reading those and preparing our responses. Of course, we're continuing on our criminal cases and all of the other cases that I've talked to all of you about before, but essentially, we've just been continuing the work this month and doing the things that we have been doing, continuing those missions. So if there are any questions that any of you have, I'll be happy to answer the questions to the best of my ability.
Any questions? Keith?
Actually, that's what Sam was for mine.
Go ahead.
Okay. Madam AG, the question I have gotten numerous times in the community is about when and how and under what circumstances is a public defender made available to a Cherokee citizen who's being detained?
So if a Cherokee comes into the tribal court and they have a criminal offense, they have an opportunity to file an affidavit which explains that they can't afford their own attorney and that they need one to be appointed by the court. They take that affidavit and they give it to the judge, and the judge will review the affidavit and makes a decision about whether or not, based upon the information provided in his or her judgment, that they need to have an attorney appointed to them. And if in their judgment they do demonstrate that they cannot afford an attorney, then one is appointed to them by the court. That's a decision that the court makes about whether or not they are able to demonstrate the need to have counsel appointed to them. If they can't afford to have counsel, or if they can afford to have counsel appointed to them, then the judge will typically give them, some time to go out and hire private counsel. So if their application is denied, they're typically given an opportunity to do that. That's the process in tribal court. The public defender that they'll get is usually is always a contract attorney. So we don't have a public defender's office like you might sometimes see in larger cities. Instead, the defense is usually provided by local attorneys who work directly for the court. Their bills go to the court and are paid by the court.
Would when you said local attorneys, if they are being detained in Rogers County or Washington County, is there an attempt made to connect them with an attorney who's also in that general community?
Well, certainly attorneys from that community have to volunteer to serve as a public defender. So if they are on the court's list as people who are willing to serve as public defenders, then the court can appoint them out. So that list that the court keeps is the list from which they pull.
Are we actively recruiting attorneys in communities?
That would be a court question and not an AG question. I mean, I know that the list, grows and contracts on a pretty regular basis, and so I would presume that that's the case. I know that the nation pays its public defenders slightly better than the state does, so we have not had, I think, a particularly big issue getting public defenders to take cases, although I know the court would be, happy to talk to anyone else out there who might be watching this or listening to this who might be interested in serving as a public defender in the tribal court.
Well, I'd sure like to make sure that we are working to use as local to that area where they're being detained as possible, because that's usually where their family also is, and the access to time together with their attorney can be very, very precious for people who are needing that.
Right.
Thank you.
Candace?
OCO Attorney General Hill, thank you for being with us today. I may not have as much of a question, it may be a little bit more of a statement, but I believe it relates strongly to the work that you do as Attorney General. You are a staunch defender of our tribal sovereignty and of Cherokee sovereignty. It has recently come to my attention that a member of this body has said that Mcgrath is the greatest threat to Oklahoma, which I completely disagree with. I feel like it's completely unfounded and totally unsupported. It's an invalid comment. And I would also say that it borders on being treasonous and traitorous to Cherokee Nation. This individual, who is a member of our body, has mischaracterized Mcgrath as being an outgrowth of the Murphy case, which I believe you would certainly disagree with, as those are two completely separate cases that were heard before the U.S. Supreme Court. The individual, who is also a member of this body, has stated that were they to attain outside office, that they would threaten congressional plenary action to limit and abrogate tribal sovereignty, which is a clear dereliction of their duty as a tribal counselor. As elected officials, we make an oath to promote the culture, heritage, and traditions of the Cherokee Nation, but also to uphold our laws and our Constitution. So to seek to cede tribal sovereignty, I feel, is a treasonous and a traitorous act to make those statements. We are seeing clear attacks on tribal sovereignty in the form of the Brackeen case. We are seeing clear attacks on tribal sovereignty in Castro Huerta with the amicus briefs from the state of Oklahoma. And I am greatly troubled that a member of this body is alleging that Cherokee Nation is not a bipartisan organization, although we clearly are, which is shown through our political giving, which is equally balanced between the Oklahoma Republican and Oklahoma Democratic parties. We support our Republican contingent of elected officials here in the state of Oklahoma. So I just want to ask you the question, do statements from elected officials that are clearly treasonous, clearly traitorous, clearly wrongheaded, clearly in a dereliction of his duty as an elected official, does that make your work more difficult?
I mean, all of these statements make it more difficult because that is very much in line, those kinds of statements are very much in line with what Governor Stitt is saying. All of these things sort of fall in right behind the attacks that have been made on tribes and tribal sovereignty. So I would say, yes, it does make the job more difficult. There is a lot of people, or not a lot of people, there's a very specific group of people in Oklahoma who like to talk about Mcgrath as if somehow it was destructive to Oklahoma, as if it ripped Oklahoma apart, and the state's going to be, cut in half. Those kinds of statements get made all of the time. And I don't think that anything in if you sit down and read the Mcgrath decision, it's not at all about destruction. It's all about restoration. It is about restoring the correct legal balance between the tribes who had enforceable treaty promises made to them, who are governments, who represent citizens who have a right to govern themselves, and restoring that balance properly between the tribes and the state of Oklahoma. The way, not to tear anything apart, but to renew something, to restore something back to the way it should have been in the first place. Mm-hmm. That is what Mcgrath is really about. It's about restoration. And I think that's the difference in viewpoint maybe from tribal people, who know their own history. They see when the rule of law fails Cherokee people, it has meant removal. It has meant having our land allotted, even though there were promises made that it would never be allotted. It's becoming a part of a state, even though there were promises made you would never be a part of any state. It's just the rule of law violated over and over again. And Mcgrath doesn't fix all of that, and it cannot, but what it did do is it said, what's legal and what's right matters, and we are going to restore the rule of law in Oklahoma. And I think that's what Mcgrath is about. It is not, in no part of it is it about tearing the United States or Oklahoma apart.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for those clarifying comments. My understanding of Mcgrath is that it is somewhat corrective action. I have heard the Mcgrath decision referred to almost as judicial poetry. Within that decision, it states at the end of the trail, there was a promise. So this is about a promise that was made to Indian nations, to tribal nations, that is being upheld by the U.S. Supreme Court. And that is something that we, as elected officials, need to support, defend, and get behind, because without our sovereignty, we are nothing. So we need to be staunch defenders of our tribal sovereignty and not opponents of our tribal sovereignty. I really appreciate that clarification and that description of the Mcgrath decision as restorative, as it being restorative. We all know that we have multiple sources of attacks on our tribal sovereignty and that we need to stand strong for this because tribal sovereignty protects our language, it protects our culture, it protects our way of life. That's the way we live now, the way we used to live, and the way we should be living. So it protects all of those things. All of that is wrapped up in our tribal sovereignty, so we need to be defenders of tribal sovereignty and not seek to abrogate, limit, or detract from our tribal sovereignty. And I thank you for your time, Attorney General Hill. Thank you for the time, Speaker.
Attorney General, on the news last week, it came out about Governor Stitt not signing the cross-deputization. Is that something that you're aware of or anything of that sort that's going to hinder things as we move along into the process? Or
It shouldn't be anything that interferes with anything we're doing. Governor Stitt doesn't sign those cross-steps anyway. They're signed between the agencies. So when our cross-deputization agreements, and Shannon is probably the reigning expert on cross-deputization agreements, but they're signed between individual agencies. So I haven't heard anything about Governor Stitt taking action to compromise the cross-step agreements in any way. It would be shocking to me if he did because of the civil liability that would exist for his officers who would be running around on a reservation making arrests without the benefit of the tribal jurisdiction, which is provided by the cross-step. So that would be a very shocking and destructive thing for someone to try to do, to take the cross-steps and tear them apart. I'm not saying that he's not trying to do that. I don't know the particulars of that situation, but I haven't heard that, and I don't think that his signature is not required on the cross-steps that we have with the state of Oklahoma's various, state law enforcement agencies. Is that correct, Shannon?
second question, rumor has it that when we detain, like maybe in Cherokee County or Mays County, Delaware, at the Sheriff's Department, are we being charged higher rates than what it would be normally done by if they were holding them for the state or wherever they would?
I mean, I think the answer to that question is yes, because the county built those facilities. So when they hold a prisoner in a county facility that they built, they don't have to pay a daily rate to themselves, right? They invested in that facility in the first place, so they are taking advantage of a facility that they already have. When they hold prisoners for other entities like the tribe or the United States, then there is typically some kind of daily rate that the tribe or that whatever that entity is that didn't build the jail will pay that fee to compensate them fairly for the use of that facility. Now, fairly, of course, is a topic that is always in the eye of the beholder, but we have agreements with all of these different facilities that we felt comfortable with, that we felt was a fair, balancing of the different uses and obligations that were involved.
Anybody else? All right. Good report, Sarah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, didn't see you. Go ahead.
Go ahead, who?
Is that Wes?
That would be me. It'd be
Okay.
Counselor Nofar.
Okay.
Main thing is I just want to address here is we're going to start getting on verbal attacks on sitting council members by making so-called treasonous threats. Counselor, and we need to look at making sure that we're not overstepping the boundaries here. If someone has a problem with another counselor's statement, they can address them personally. Bring it out onto the council floor. It's just not the place to be, and also to take someone's word and misinterpret them as something else is not the place either. So I just wanted to clarify those things. It's the way we're supposed to conduct ourselves as counselor and not be bringing something ridiculous and absurd, such as treasonous and trying to make claims that's not necessary to this council. So appreciate it.
All right. Thank you. Anybody else? Sarah, good report. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
All right, next we have with FOIA and GRA, Gwen Terrapin, and there she is. You're quick.
Good afternoon. It's nice to be
afternoon.
able to sit in here with you all. My FOIA and GRA report hasn't changed much over the last couple of months. We've had 4 requests. There's none outstanding, no GRA request. And the update on the website is not only with my report, but our awesome IT team has gone in, and I think they're doing this for other departments too, for different documents. On the FOIA document now, they can go in and they can actually fill it out there online and sign it, and then it will get directly emailed to me, so that they don't have to worry about, whether they have to email it in or whether they mail it in, then it's coming directly to me. So in a way, it's a shortcut for our Cherokee citizens or anyone that wants to go in and fill out a FOIA request.
Does anybody have any questions for Ms. Terrapin? All right, good job, Gwen. Appreciate you. All right, next from the Tax Commission, Sharon Swepson.
Good afternoon.
Hey, Sharon.
I believe you all have my report. I would like to give you a little bit of update on the Catoosa office. Looks like we're out 2 to 3 weeks before we're going to be moving into that building. I know they're going through a punch list this afternoon, so very soon we should be moving into that new building at Catoosa. At Stillwell, we have opened the positions. We've interviewed and made a selection for the 3 staff that will be going into the Stillwell office. I don't have a date yet when we're going to open that one yet. We're kind of sharing that building. They had some buildings that flooded, and so they had to put some other people in there for a little while, but hopefully it won't be too terribly long. And then at J, we've also opened that position, interviewed, and made a selection, so we're hoping on that one.
Well, good.
I'll try to entertain any questions you might have.
All right, anybody have any questions for Sharon? Keith?
On the Catoosa facility, is the same staff coming back, or, and you've been able to retain them through this whole process?
Yes.
Over at the other facility, and are you bringing new staff in too?
We have 6 staff that will be coming back, and we have 2 positions that are currently open, and then once we get those filled, then we'll open the other 2, and that'll make the 10.
Excellent, excellent news. I also noticed in our motor vehicle taxes, we're up about 11% so far this year, which is a very nice jump when you consider how much we're already doing. Is that because we're doing more tags, or is it because cars are costing 11% more money?
I'm sure that it has a little to do with both, but we are doing more tags, and I'm sure that some of the, the vehicles cost a little more, and that adds to it also, but I think the biggest portion is that we're just selling more tags.
Good. That was the answer I was hoping for.
All right, anybody else? All right, Sharon, good job.
Thank
Great,
you.
good to hear those good things are happening in our tag offices.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next from the Gaming Commission, Janice Purcell.
Good afternoon. I submitted my report, and I was at ACRA last meeting, which is Oklahoma Tribal Gaming Regulators Association. NIGC put on some programs for licensing, and so Ms. Deal presented for me, and I just want to say thank you.
Does anybody have any questions for Janice? All right, Janice, you got off light today.
Thank you so much.
All right, have a good weekend. And next from Human Resources, Samantha Hendricks.
Hoping for one of those light times, those questions. So we're continuing to streamline our processes. We're still trying to shorten our application process and trying to streamline as much as possible. We did, over the last several months, we have piloted a new program. We focused in on the ECU and the dentistry and Job Corps. That was what we call an interview event, where we call in like candidates that are qualified for positions in those areas and interview them for the positions. So we're trying to help and partner with the department directors and to help streamline that interview process a little bit. They made the selections on site, so that helped quite a bit. Very similar to a job fair, but this is more of an interview event of people that are actually qualified for the positions they're coming in for. So we did see some success with that, with those 3 areas. We were able to hire 25 selections, so we're going to continue to to work on, streamlining that through the nation so we can help with those hard-to-fill positions. Starting next week, we will be able to accommodate new hires with pre-employment screening, which is our drug screening, at the 14 counties. So we were able to, I think the last time I was here, we talked about two locations, so we were able to expand that over to the 14 counties. So, new hires are not having to drive all the way into Tahlequah to do that pre-employment screening. They can actually go to a location that's near to them within the 14 counties. So we're very happy about that. And so, the other thing is that we did add an additional day to orientation. So normally we do those on Monday mornings. And we've added an additional day for Wednesday. So an applicant that's hired or a new hire doesn't have to wait all the way to the following Monday to start. So as we see this low-hanging fruit, we're continuing to make changes and streamline our processes to make it easier for the new hire experience. So with that, you have my report. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer whatever I can.
Does anybody have any questions for Samantha? Darrell?
So if we do orientation on a Wednesday, I know that we generally did it every Monday just for pay period purposes. There
Right.
could be like a check at 3/4 on their first check if they do the Wednesday orientation.
It would be from the time that they start,
I got you.
yes.
Anybody else? Danny?
Yes, ma'am. When we hire somebody new in, do we offer any kind of a training to where, as they continue to work, say they wind up working 30 or 40 years for the nation, investment, kind of like financial literacy is offered in high school. Do we do anything like that with our new employees?
Yes, we do. Well, we offer with our LMS courses, we do, offer Learning Management System, sorry, our acronyms here, Learning Management System, where we offer additional training for not only current employees, but new hires going in to positions, yes.
Sean?
Samantha, I'm hearing great things going on in your office and good things going on.
Thank
I'm
you.
still getting some calls about positions. Has it been filled yet, 2 or 3 weeks later? And are we working on a way that we can kind of keep those folks that are applying better in the loop, as far as?
We are.
Man, I got my heart set on this job. It's 3 weeks later. Has it been filled or not? And then, so can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yes, sir, it's that part of that communication, we're definitely trying to streamline, or if you want to call it, more communication to the employees, because that's when we get a lot of the questions too, is that I've applied for a position, but, I haven't heard anything in however long. And so I like to get back with them within a week of interviewing, but sometimes we just haven't got that process down just yet, so we're working on that.
Is there some kind of, on our software we use, just something that we can, put pending, just like you said, keep them better communicated with?
Mm-hmm. I think that's a great idea, yes, and that's exactly what we're working toward.
Thank you. And again, I'm hearing great things and appreciate what you do.
Oh, thank you very
Thank
much. I'm not as nervous as I was the first time I came up here. So.
Deputy Speaker?
I just wanted to say thank you for your efforts and your success in the streamlining that you are doing. I know how that pays off in the employment process, and I've heard from some people that recently applied and have received positions, and they were very happy to get on board. So I think you're doing great work.
Thank you. I couldn't do it without a great team, so they're definitely great to work with, so.
Anybody else? EO?
I'd just like to echo in on that. Seemed like that black coal's gone and we're getting more, and I've received calls too that people have said tickled to death at the time because they'd heard terrible stories, and you're doing good. Appreciate
Okay.
it.
Well, thank you. Like I said, I have a great team, so.
Anybody else? I just make a real quick comment. The one thing I guess I got complaints on in the past, and it sounds like you're addressing it, is, there'd be numerous people put in for a position, and they were never contacted that they got the job or ever didn't get the job, and they didn't know when to put in for another job, how long to wait. So that, I've heard that a lot. I've had a lot of people get a hold of me about that, but it sounds like you're addressing that. So that would be a big help in our hiring process, even to the ones who don't get it. It allows them to move forward.
Yes, sir.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Thank you, ma'am. All right, good report.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks. All right, old business, none pending. New business, Rex.
I'd like to amend the agenda to add rules of procedure governing the Cherokee Nation Tribal Council.
Second.
Yes, a motion.
Yes. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All right, if there's no discussion, all in favor of? Aye. All opposed? Go ahead and real quickly.
Aye.
Okay, so we have 2 nays? Is that correct? Okay. Well, that carries a two.
Correct.
That carries a 2/3 to pass the amendment, so the amendment passes. Okay, and we will go ahead.
Point of order.
Yes, ma'am. Can you hear me?
The only vote we were taking was to amend the agenda, so we have now amended the agenda. We have actually not had a motion for the actual item, I believe.
I know that. I haven't, if you'd let me,
Oh,
if you'd
okay.
let
I
me
thought you said
continue.
the item passed.
No,
I'm sorry.
if you'd let me continue, I would get that on there. I'm just saying, I was telling
I'm very
everybody that we
sorry.
had
I
2/3.
misunderstood. I thought I heard you say that the item passed.
No,
I'm sorry.
I was trying to
Thank
tell
you.
everybody that it took 2/3 for that amendment to pass. All right, we are going to go ahead and, we'll just put that first right now. So, do you want to read that?
This will be a rules of procedure governing the Cherokee Nation Tribal Council. Everyone got the papers? And on page 8, in the red, it'll be a minimum of 5 sponsors to get anything on legislation. That includes ever who's doing it, plus 4 others. And on the last page, I have the sponsors there for this.
All right. Yeah, that is a motion.
Yeah.
Okay, second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Speaker, you got to call for discussion on this.
Well, we had discussion beforehand, nobody spoke up.
Oh, it was brought forward.
Okay,
There
we can,
wasn't
all right, first of all, we will have discussion, but Councilman, I want to ask you, are you currently on Cherokee Nation business?
You what?
Are you currently on Cherokee Nation business? You're remote attending. Are you on Cherokee Nation business right now?
Yes, I'm on my way back to being in the office to handle the next agenda meeting. Right now, I'm on Cherokee Nation business. I'm calling into this meeting. That's exactly what this.
That is not Cherokee Nation business. You can only remote attend if you're missing because you're on Cherokee Nation business or there is an extraordinary circumstance why you can't be here. Our procedures clearly state that, and I'm asking you if you're on either of two or one of the two.
Yes, I am. I'm traveling back to be on business in the council chambers right now.
Mr. Young, does that conform to what our procedures say?
I think you have to be out on Cherokee Nation business in order to qualify under the rule, not traveling to attend Cherokee Nation business.
Did you hear that?
Leaving my house, which was handling Cherokee Nation council businesses on phone calls today, handling constituents, and now transporting myself back to the council chamber is not in any reason. This is just beyond absurd, Speaker. You never had this issue before. You never called on Councilor Keith Austin whenever he was in his phone call and his vehicle transporting himself back to the council. This is simply just an attack on me and my council. That's all it is.
Actually, that's not true, sir. Mr. Young, would you address that?
Are we moving forward with the discussion?
Would
or what are we
you,
doing?
would you address that? Do you agree with that assessment, Mr. Young?
The rule states unless there's an extraordinary circumstance that would prevent you from being here, or you're out on Cherokee Nation business unless you're an at-large counselor. Those are the only grounds for attending remotely.
Okay, I've had a phlegm in my throat. What kind of excuses do you want, counselor? What kind of legal? This is a pandemic. We're still under an EM for an order of a pandemic. That does count from an extraordinary case.
Actually, we're not. I see her. Okay, Councilman Coates? Julia, can you hear me?
I was just going to say the same thing, that when was the extraordinary order lifted? Because I had not gotten notification of that.
Well, obviously it is because we're having council meetings and the public is invited and the public can attend here. So obviously we're not under that anymore.
Okay, I don't think that was specifically ever stated, though. I understand, you know, the logical connection and so forth, but I do think that that's my opinion. Things should not be assumed in that regard. I think it's reasonable, you know, that it's been lifted, but I do think that needs to be kind of specifically stated. It may be neither here nor there in terms of this particular discussion, but I've attended while in my car driving to the airport when I had to leave to catch a flight because the meeting was still going on, which I thought would be over by that time. I do recall other people attending. So I'm just saying that for consideration. I don't want to be perceived as taking a position one way or the other on this, but my position is for consistency. That's all. Thank you.
Well, you are an at-large councilwoman, so you are allowed to remote attend. And if you want to talk about specifics, this procedure specifically says it's either one of the two. So, Councilman, if you don't meet either requirement, then you are not allowed to remote attend.
And I've professed that I've met both requirements.
Well, you haven't given us anything to say that you are. I asked you directly, and now if you want to change your story, I mean, I'm just asking you because that's what the procedure says.
Okay, if you want to continue being a cop with your investigation, then you can do that outside the council chambers. If you're going to be a speaker, then that's what we're going to do here. You're not investigating me and what I am doing.
Actually, my job is to conduct business, and that's what I'm doing. This is part of business.
Okay, now we're way off topic, and I'll call for another point of order. We can move forward with discussion on this or not.
Councilman Coates?
I also want to return to the order of the business rather than this continue on. There were two motions in front of us. The first motion was to amend the agenda, which required a 2/3 vote. The discussion that was required for that motion was discussion about whether or not to amend the agenda. It was not about the the proposed agenda item itself. And so when that required a second motion and was seconded, there should have been a second period of discussion about the agenda item itself. That would not have been covered under the motion to simply amend the agenda. And I believe that's what Councilor Nofire's point is that there was no discussion called for on the actual agenda item that we had amended the agenda to include, and that there should have been. That's all.
And I agree with that, and that's why I allowed him to start to talk, but then I asked him about if he, because of procedure, whether or not he could remote attend. So obviously, I did open it up for discussion. I just questioned the ability or not whether he was able to remote attend because of what procedure says. Go ahead.
Well, maybe I'm not hearing things remotely very well, but I didn't hear a second call for discussion. What I heard was a motion, a second, and then a call for a vote. And that's, you know, as I said, it's difficult to attend these meetings remotely. Sometimes you do not hear everything, but I think a call for discussion, I would have heard that, hopefully. So that's all.
Okay. Anybody else have anything to say? Keith?
I too wish that we had had opportunity to have public discussion before a vote was called for. I actually wish that I'd had the opportunity to ask for this to be tabled for a month because it was just made available shortly before the vote was taken. And the opportunity to even digest this change has not, in my book, been given to us. This is a substantial change to our policy and procedure of how we do business. And I believe that we should have had the opportunity to have had time for this to be digested before we were voted on so quickly. It appears that the vote was already held, and yet I didn't get an opportunity to express my desire to have more time. Apparently, other people have a different take on this, but I wish I'd had enough time to actually ask some questions. I didn't get a chance to ask any of the sponsors. I knew nothing about this till the vote was taken. For the record, I did not vote on it because I didn't have the information to vote on it.
Anybody else? Julia?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't say these things previously because, again, I didn't realize we were in discussion, but I agree completely with it. It's not necessarily that I disagree with the change, but I would like to understand the change better. Why? I want to hear, some arguments back and forth so that I can make a decision that I feel that, I have information, enough information to make that decision. And then the other thing is that I've noticed a couple of other things because the initial, when I don't get it in person, when it's emailed to me, I don't see red line or red text in it. And so Shelley has had to screenshot it to me. And that's difficult to read because it's tiny. My old eyes don't see it very well and so forth. And, but while looking it over, I've also noticed a couple of places in our standing rules where an incorrect word is being used. And also a place where there's a section that is contradictory to our law in terms of in-person versus remote voting. So there are other aspects of these rules that just in looking over the text are also places that maybe should be amended. And I would support just tabling this for 1 month. I don't agree ever with things being thrown at us immediately before a meeting, even if it does seem like a relatively small change. It was explained to me, and when I saw the red line text or the red text, it's only about the number of sponsors needed on a piece of legislation, but I still would like to understand why people are feeling the need to make this change. And I just think that it is respectful to all members of the body if, changes to some of these significant documents, especially that sort of govern our conduct in a meeting, that we have time to digest them, that we have time to think about them. I literally got this 5 minutes before the meeting started. Others may have had it handed out earlier, but when one is attending remotely, you don't necessarily know and have time to look at it. So that's my comment. I agree with Councilor Austin on it. And I would just respectfully ask that we be allowed to at least have that discussion at this time. If people do want to go ahead and vote today or re-vote, I hope that wasn't the final vote.
Actually, we are discussing it, Councilman, right now.
Okay.
I mean, we've had several.
I go ahead and then ask Mr. Speaker if you would ask others, because I know that I'm not supposed to directly address others, but my general question is if sort of the reasoning behind this requirement to require a minimum of 5 counselors to sponsor a legislation, if that can be sort of shared with us. What is the perceived benefit of this? Thank you.
Thank you. Do you want to address that?
I'll address it.
Okay.
This is to keep someone from just coming in here, and we've had it happened to us before, bringing in some kind of legislation that doesn't really amount to nothing, but we'll sit here for an hour listening to it and then vote it down. If you can't have 5 sponsors, 4, including yourself, then we probably shouldn't listen to it. That's my take on it.
Julia? Go ahead.
Was that me?
Yes, yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you, yeah. I appreciate that. I know that that has been a problem at times. It makes me think back to a couple of different concepts, and the first is that under Robert's Rules of Order, and hopefully in any democratic proceeding, whether it's operating by parliamentary procedure or not, one of the tenets is a respect for the minority, right? Even though the will of the majority prevails, a respect for the minority is part of the whole proceeding, and I think that we would all agree with that, hopefully. We are setting a minority at being as 5 people, right, at least. And what if a minority is 4 people, or 3 people, or 2 people, or even 1 person? There is, a minority is a minority, and even if 1 person only thinks that this is a good idea, I think it is their right to present it to us at least. And if it goes on and on and on and on, I want to point out something that I think all of us already know, which is that we as a body have the power to put a stop to that. We can call the question at any time with a 2/3 vote. We can, we have ways to do it if we were more adept at being able to use them, that would not require us to limit, some of the democratic rights that I strongly feel that any member of this body should have. And this is exactly why these kinds of motions to call the question and so forth exist in Robert's Rules of Order, because there are ways that we can prevent this from going on. And I was, as I look over our standing rules, it just is kind of like there's a good portion of our standing rules are things that are already part of Robert's Rules of Order, and we are either trying to, remind ourselves of it or use our standing rules as a cheat sheet or whatever, but there's, our standing rules could be very, very brief because much of it is already included in Robert's Rules of Order. And if this is the reason that we are limiting to some degree the democratic right of any member of this body to sponsor and bring forth legislation, when we already have other mechanisms by which we can limit what I agree is a problem, has been a problem, right? I don't dispute that at all. But my concern is that we not limit any member of this body from performing what is their duty. And by taking what is their right to bring legislation forth, even if they are the only one. Part of being able to do this is to persuade others. And even if we're only 1 or 2 or 3 people, those people really have the right to try to persuade others. And if others are not being persuaded, then they have the right to employ Robert's Rules of Order and the calling for the previous question to limit any kind of debate that is just spinning on and on and on and going off on all kinds of other tangents. There are other ways than we can do this. And if this is the reason, then I would regard this as kind of a draconian way of dealing with this issue. So that's all. I appreciate the time. Thank you.
Is there anybody else? Candace?
I very much appreciate the debate that has been going on to this moment, and I definitely take Counselor Coates' words under advisement. I am one of the sponsors on this particular proposal, and I think, you know, she's invoked some pretty weighty words there. You know, I think maybe draconian is some hyperbole that is not necessary in this particular moment. But ultimately, when we're talking about the legislative process, you know, there are 17 of us here. And in the past, when I've sponsored legislation or sought to sponsor legislation, I don't want to do that in a way that wastes anybody's time. I want to make sure that I have garnered support before I'm bringing that forward. I call people, I text people, I talk to people. I say, hey, let's go to lunch and let's talk about this thing that I'm thinking about, and I want to hear your feedback. We have some things that have come to the floor before in which a member of this body has done none of that whatsoever. A member of this body who does not return texts, who does not return phone calls from from their peers on this council. So you know, while I take Counselor Coates' words to heart, and I do hold the democratic process very dear, you know, the only work that we do is not the work that's here on camera. The work that we do is also behind the scenes with other counselors as well. We have to make sure that we are aggregating a coalition, that we are coalition builders, that we're building consensus. And when we have a member of this body who seeks to work against this body, who seeks to bring forth things that are, you know, maybe superfluous or political grandstanding, maybe self-aggrandizing types of items.
Councilman, if you would, point of order, let's stay on topic.
Okay, well, I believe that garnering 4 other sponsors is not that tall an order. If you garner 4 sponsors, you actually have a chance to pass your legislation that you're sponsoring. You have a chance at making that a reality. And it's part of the reason why I support this measure and part of the reason why I signed on as a sponsor. Thank you for the time, Chair.
Victoria, did you have something?
Basically, it was pretty much what Candace had said, but in a shorter form, I would just say that in the past, we have had numerous requests at the last minute to amend an agenda. And oftentimes, it was not necessary to amend the agenda that day to add whatever that idea or that legislation was. That's why I signed on to sponsor this, because that's one way to put a stop to it, in my opinion.
Danny, did you have something?
I do.
Or EO, okay.
I just wanted to endorse what Candace said, but I couldn't say it near as elegant as she did. But I know if I wanted to get something around, I'd do a little bit of work. I'd go find me 4 people that, if I really had something I wanted to shoot through there, I could find me 4 people if it was something that mattered. So that's why I went with it, because we're wasting so much time, and it's all for politics and all this. I realize that. That's why I want to stop it, and that's why I'm one of the sponsors. It could be taken care of very easy. Thank you.
Danny?
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I was a sponsor on the bill. I'm a new counselor. There has been bills that people have brought forward that I knew nothing about as I got to council as well. But the point is that if you do want something passed, you're going to have the support. And generally speaking, from the first day that we had council, I had phone calls and texts for support on different things as well. So I supported this bill because it does take up a lot of time when we come in and none of us know anything about the bill. We have no idea about it. There's only one sponsor, so I felt that having at least 5 sponsors would give almost 1/3 of the council an idea to see what was going on, and we could go from there. Thank you.
Mr. Kidwell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I kind of waited as long as I could because I'm digesting that, as my colleague, Councilman Austin has pointed out. I'm kind of digesting this as we go here. A lot of what everyone's, I totally understand the reason that we want to make this happen, or that this has come forward. But, you know, part of our job, I think, is to protect the rights of the minority and allow people to bring things forward, even though we may disagree with it. It may not be anything that we want to hear. I mean, this isn't an easy job, and this is difficult. We have to sit here with folks and listen to things talked about that I wholeheartedly might agree or disagree with. It's not easy. But I think that I agree with what has been said by my at-large colleague, Councilwoman Coates, that our rules should be in place to protect the rights of the minority and to be able to hear different things that are put forward, even though we may disagree with them and we may vote against them. But we have other mechanisms in place, I believe, to quell grandstanding. I've heard that word thrown out. I've heard some others. I think that we can do that in a different way. I think that making this change in our rules impacts far beyond what we're trying to accomplish just right now. I can understand why it will likely pass, but I respectfully request, Mr. Chair, that you would entertain a motion to table this for at least 30 days while we discuss this a little bit more.
Are you making that motion?
I make that motion, yes, sir.
Is there a second? We have a motion and a second to table this for a month. We can discuss this, or we can just go straight, I guess we go straight into voting. So, all in favor of tabling this for a month? Say aye.
Aye.
All right, let's do it by hands, okay? All in favor for tabling this for a month, raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, keep them up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6. 7 with Julia. Wes cannot vote. He's not remote attending properly. So that's
I'm
7?
remote attending.
So that's 7?
That vote counts. That vote counts, plain and simple.
So 7? Shelley? All right, all opposed, raise your hand. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. You get 8. 3, 4, 5, 6, 8. Okay. And what does that have to pass? We did. Okay. So the motion fails to table. All right. Now we're going back. Is there any more discussion? I mean, we'll open that up for that, or any other comments.
Number one, does this mean the vote stands? It
Yes.
stands.
This means that this will be voted on. We haven't voted on it yet.
Okay,
This just the motion to table did not pass.
okay.
So we're still in discussion.
Well, I certainly agree with the frustrations that have led to this being proposed. I don't agree with this being an emergency that required an amendment to the agenda. We had discussion down here that we get frustrated with agending the amenda. This was not an emergency, folks. This was something that there's no reason this couldn't have been waited till we all had proper time to have digested it. There was no need to amend the agenda for this. This could have been put on next month's agenda just fine and accomplished its goals. So point number one is that. Point number two is that we should never quelch the voice of the minority through the majority, because someday, folks, we will be the minority once again, and we will be pushing laws that limit our voice when we are once again the minority. And without the voice of the minority being heard, sometimes this literally is the only platform in order for an issue to be heard. It may not get the support of the body, but it may be the only opportunity for this issue to be heard in the public eye. And I think every council person deserves the right to have their issue heard in the public eye, as long as they get it on the agenda properly. And that's pretty much all I needed to say on that.
Okay. Any other discussion or comments? Julia? Julia, can you
Yeah,
hear?
and this may be inappropriate, but I think that there are a couple of other small points that I wondered if people would consider additional amendments to this, just to clean those up. If not, one of them is a word that's being incorrectly used that I've noticed, and another is a place where we're out of compliance with Cherokee law. And I wondered if people might entertain an amendment to consider a couple of additional.
Tell us what they are.
Okay. There's a section under conduct where it says,
What page is that, Julia?
I don't know because I only have it in an electronic form, so.
It's page 3.
Okay. And there's a paragraph under B. It looks like it's 3B, and it says about halfway down, being officially censored or being removed from the council chambers, and I think the word is censured, which is CENSURED, which is, to be chastised, basically. If we don't actually want to censor anyone, I don't think, but we do want to censure, so.
Yeah, Scribner's then, yes.
And then in the next section, subsection there on voting, it says that section is out of compliance, I believe, with our current law because we do have a law that says that at-large counselors can attend remotely and that any other counselor can attend if they are on official business. So I think that needs to come out and just say that we will abide by Cherokee law in terms of attendance, something like that.
Well, we already passed that. Hold on just a second, Julia.
If she's talking about here, that's council chambers, and we can't do at-large in council chambers unless we're paying. If that's the section I'm thinking.
Well, they can remote attend. The only ones that can remote attend are at large, correct? Under pandemic, right, emergency order, okay.
So that is correct, that's what she's talking about, if we're not.
That would be page 4. 4C. Is that what you're talking about, Julia, about voting, cast a vote on legislation unless he, she is seated in the council chambers during revoke call?
Yeah, I think it's 3C, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And
And I
state,
kind of heard what Shelley was whispering to you, so is about being seated in council chambers, so is this referring, it's ambiguous, is this referring specifically to the full council meeting only?
that it would have, that's the only place that we do
Not
council
committee
chambers.
meetings, huh?
That's right. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, okay. All right, then I'll withdraw that one, but I do
Okay.
think, because that would be correct, but I think
Okay.
that the change of the word needs to be done if we can do that today as well. Thank you.
Okay. All right, is there anybody else? Okay, with that change, we will now vote on this. There was no friendly. There was no, no, there was no friendly. She just, it was a Scribner on that one word. Okay. Yes, and that will be included in this new. Okay. So, all in favor of this passing, say aye. Aye. All opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Motion carries. All right. All right, let's start off with number 1. Keith, would you take that, please?
This is a resolution confirming the reappointment. Reappointment, is that correct? He's already on there? Okay, of John Michael Mcgrath as a Commissioner of the Cherokee Nation Environmental Protection Commission. I put that in the form of a motion.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Sir, would you like to say a few words?
Sure. Good afternoon. My name is John Michael Mcgrath. It's an honor to be nominated and under consideration for the Environmental Protection Commission, and I look forward to serving the Cherokee Nation.
So is this a reappointment or are you new?
I'm new.
Okay, so that needs to be changed to the appointment instead of reappointment. Does anybody have any questions? Mr. Kidwell?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Hey, Mr. McGrath, thanks for being here today. I appreciate you reaching out, making the phone calls, making the, doing everything that you needed to do to make this happen. I'm glad that you're being put forward here, and I think that your knowledge and experience, look at your resume, I know your family moderately well, and I tell you, you come from good stock. I appreciate all that. I appreciate you being here. I think that your resume and your knowledge experience is going to bring good things to the board, and I'm happy to be supporting your nomination. So I appreciate you being here today.
Thank you, Councilor.
Mr. Chair.
Anybody else? All right, I too am listed as a sponsor, and your resume, it sounds like you're very well qualified to be what you'll be doing.
Thank you.
Victoria? Keith?
Yes, I want to say you're the first in a long time, if not ever, that's been a member of our U.S. Olympic team. And that's quite impressive.
Thank you. It was not curling. It was clay target shooting.
Skeet?
And I also heard that, how many opportunities do you have to shoot in a round?
So one round's 25 targets, general, usually competition's 125, and then if you make a final, 150. They're in the process of changing.
So is it true that you hit 149 out of 150?
That was in Sydney, Australia.
Wow, that's awesome. All right, is anything else? All right, let's have a vote. All in favor? All opposed? All right, congratulations. Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you.
All right, number 2, Dora, would you take that?
This is a resolution confirming the appointment of Julietti Rakola as a board member of Cherokee Nation Businesses LLC. I put that in the form of a motion.
We have a motion and a second. Okay, is Julie here? All right, come on up. Tell us about yourself, ma'am, why you want to do this.
First of all, Speaker, and to all the counselors and the Deputy Speaker, thank you so much for having me here today. It's such an honor to be here in Tahlequah with all of you. My name's Julietti Rakola. I currently live in Washington, D.C., but I grew up in Oklahoma my entire life. My family's from Warner, Oklahoma. I grew up in Broken Arrow. Some of you might know my grandmother. She was Betty Faye Trim. She had the Trim Hereford Ranch, which was right on the highway there when you go through Warner. So that might give you some context. I know I had the opportunity to speak to some of you guys over the past couple of weeks and shared some stories about buying bulls from her or whatever it may have been. But she was very, very proud of our Cherokee heritage and instilled in all of us what an honor it was to be a member of the Cherokee Nation. So I am honored to be here today and thrilled by this possible appointment. So thank you, Speaker.
Any questions? Julia?
Thank you for your recent phone call. Ms. Rakola, am I pronouncing it correctly?
It's Rakola.
Rakola, okay, I apologize, thank you. I did not return your call, but you will definitely have my vote today, and I just wanted to say, as I was looking over your letter, you had me at Doris Matsui. I lived in her district at the time when she was serving. I very much appreciated her service and that of her husband before her, and so anybody who has worked with her is a friend of mine, and I will be very pleased to vote for you and to have your service on our board. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Doc?
Yes, Ms. Rakola, you say you reside in D.C.?
I do.
So on average, how many days a month are you on the reservations here?
Well, I've been on the reservation 3 times in the past year. And before that, it just depends. I do come with my mother occasionally, who's with me today, who uses your healthcare services very regularly.
So if appointed, you'll basically attend CMB meetings remotely, then from D.C., is that correct?
No, this is a wonderful opportunity for me to come home and see my family. I have 2 sisters and my mother who live in Oklahoma.
Okay, so you plan on attending in person?
I don't know that I'll be able to attend every time. I do have 2 children, but I would like to attend as often as possible.
Okay. Do you participate in Cherokee elections?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Doc. Victoria?
Yes, I just have a couple comments, and I appreciate your phone call. Sorry we didn't get to visit longer, but it's a pleasure to meet you today. And I'm most impressed that you were given the Cherokee Nation Statesman Award in 2017, and so obviously you are very well thought of by numerous people. So I appreciate you reaching out and wanting to serve, and I believe that you would be an asset to our board. Thank you.
Thank you for your support.
Doc?
Chair, I noticed there are 2 appointments today, or replacing 2 members. Who are the 2 members that are rotating off? Do we know that?
I do not know that.
Just says seat 2 and 3.
Tara Lee, do you know? They're vacant? Are they vacant positions?
So who-
Okay, those are vacant positions within the board.
So are we adding to the board?
Yes.
We're actually adding to the
Yes.
board then? Okay, thank you, Chair.
Anybody else? I too would like to say I enjoyed our visit and was very impressed with your resume and the things that you were done, and I am happy to sponsor you.
Thank you, sir.
Any more questions? All right, we'll now vote. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? All right, congratulations, ma'am.
Thank you so much.
Thank
I
you.
look forward to it.
Thank you. All right, that moves us down to number 3. Victoria, would you take that, please?
Yes, be glad to. This is a resolution confirming the appointment of Brenda Thompson as a board member of Cherokee Nation Businesses, LLC. I move for its approval.
We have a motion and a second. Are you here? I see you trying to get up. You're trying to pull the trigger on me. All right, get up there. I'm not putting any pressure on you, but boy, those other 2 sure talk good.
Thank you. Well, first of all, it's an honor to be even considered for this position. I've been a small business owner since I was 23 years old. I've loved being independent and making money and teaching others how to run their own businesses and being a mentor. My family is from Oklahoma. I was raised in California. My mother never let me forget where I came from, and I'm very grateful for that. So I'm honored to be here. Take any questions that you might have for me. I did move back to Tahlequah from Houston just recently in February. So I have 2 new car tags to purchase. I've already purchased one, so I'm on getting the other one. And it really is wonderful to be back home in the state of Oklahoma. Thank you.
Does anybody have any questions for Brenda? Keith?
Yes, Ms. Thompson, I noticed on our conversation that we spoke about it, but it's not in your resume. You are currently a member of the Cherokee Phoenix Editorial Board, correct?
Yes.
And how long have you been on there?
Since 2018.
2018, okay, 4 years. And have you found out, assuming you're approved here, that seat will become open, is that correct or not?
As far as I know, yes.
Okay. Well, thank you for your service there and your willingness to serve here.
My pleasure.
Anybody else? All right. All in favor? All opposed? All right, welcome aboard. Thank you, ma'am.
Very much.
Yes, ma'am.
Appreciate it.
Look forward to working with you.
Thank you.
All right, and item 4, Danny, would you take that, please?
A resolution supporting the Cherokee Nation Marshal Service Badge and Credential Retirement Program. I put this in the form of a motion.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Doc?
I know, Shannon, could you just address what Credential Retirement Program is?
I'd be happy to. As a marshal is honorably retired, he or she, if this passes, will be able to maintain their badge and a credential that says they're a retired Cherokee Nation Marshal, just like our counterparts in the state or the federal system. You know, when an officer retires from the state, they can keep their badge and their retirement credentials that allows them to carry a firearm in the state of Oklahoma. It allows them to come in the office if, you know, let's say they've been retired 10 years and nobody in the office knows who they are. Here the person shows up. It would allow them to come in and freely move around my office. This would only be granted to members of the Marshal Service that honorably retire from here. So it's been needed. One of the reasons why we came into this body is I cannot give tribal property away to people. That doesn't exist. I have to have the council approval. So our badge costs something to manufacture. Our credentials, our ID, cost money to manufacture. So I want to be up front before we, you know, we have one individual that's retired, Captain Danny Tanner. So if this is approved, then I'll be bringing him in for. We haven't been able to have an official retirement for him because of COVID. So now that those restrictions have been taken away, we're excited about getting him in to get an actual cake and have everybody say how much we appreciate his service here. So that's what this is.
Thank you, Marshal.
Candace?
Thank you so much for clarifying what this process will entail. Is this something that occurs in other law enforcement agencies?
In every other law enforcement agency, yes, ma'am.
Okay, so we are just maintaining the standard by seeking to pass this?
Yes, we are.
Shelley, I'd like to be added as a sponsor to this legislation. Thank you, Shannon, and thank you for the timeshare.
Tony?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Marshal, just a quick question. We don't reuse badge numbers, correct?
No, we haven't.
We haven't even passed. So really, we're just, repurposing something that we would have discarded anyway at some point in time.
Well, our actual badge doesn't have a number on it anyway.
Okay.
So our badge itself is the seal of the Cherokee Nation with the Marshal star around it. So there's no number
Okay,
on
good.
the
So there's
badge
no
itself.
identifying information they're doing on that?
No,
Okay.
sir.
All right, super. I appreciate it. Mr. Chair, I'd like to be added as a sponsor as well.
Sean?
Just add it as a sponsor, please.
Anybody else want to be added as a sponsor? Just raise your hand. Shelley, you getting them all? Looks like everybody from here. Okay. Yep, we got you, Julia. I thought about just sitting there and letting you keep your hand up, but I was nice. Okay, is there any more discussion or comments? I think it's a good deal. Agencies across the state do this, and actually, CLEAT gives you police officer retirement if you've been there so long and you retire. So it's not something that's new. It's been around for a long time. It's a good thing. All right, let's vote. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? All right, motion carries. Thank you. Thank you, sir. Okay, do I have any announcements? I forgot. There's something I was supposed to say, and I forgot. Oh. July meetings. In the past, we've not split them up because of the holiday, and we've put them back to back. Is there a problem with it's slated for the 11th and the 12th of July? Correct? Go ahead.
Usually in July, we do them on a Monday, Tuesday
Mhm.
to allow vacations with families, especially with those with little kids or.
Any comments? Darrell?
If we could, I would, and I hate for everybody to accommodate me, but if we could do them all on the 11th, that would be super.
12, 35, 9, 10. We'd have to back it up. We'd have to start at 9. Anybody else have a comment? Danny?
Councilor, Speaker, I have a conflict on the 12th as well that I won't be able to attend.
Julia?
I have a conflict on the 12th. I've already made another commitment for that date. yeah.
Okay, does anybody have a conflict on the 11th? Would the 11th doing it all in one day, everybody kind of like that? If you don't, I'm going to hear, if you not, anybody have a problem with doing it all in one day? I mean, she's grinning, but she's not going to say. Okay, well then let's just plan on doing that on the 11th. Okay, and we will, if Gail, if you would, be sure, Gail's going to send you all out, and Shelley will send out the new date for this in July. Okay? All right. Any other announcements? Sean?
Yeah, please join me and well-dressed man, June 10th, Stillwell Cafeteria, 5:30 to 7:30, right? Catfish, ain't it?
Ooh.
All right. Thank you. That was my announcement, Speaker.
All right. Anybody else? All right, good meeting. Things get heated at times, but I appreciate you staying even keel as best we can. So with that, pardon me? We have a first. All right, all in favor? Opposed?